Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind, make sure your cell phones are silent or off. Good afternoon. The first thing that we would like for you all to do is to take a brief moment and check out what time it is. 12:56. My grandfather was never ever late for anything, and today will be no exception. I think everybody knew that because we noticed everybody was quickly finding their seats like 10 minutes ago, so thank you all. I hope everyone has an opportunity to receive the program that was left on the seat for you. Take a moment to notice that my grandfather is wearing the same shirt on the back as he is on the back of the program. The other thing that's worth noting is those pictures were taken 7 years apart. It's a true testament that my grandfather never needed new things. In fact, the apple did not fall far from the tree because my father wore that same shirt for many years before he gave it to his father. If that shirt could talk, we would have some stories. Ladies and gentlemen, we did not gather today to be sad. I hope you know that about this great Hubbard family. We are here to celebrate the amazing life of a great man. And to get us started is another grandson, John Haidt.
Good afternoon. I am the resurrection and I am the life, says the Lord. Those who believe in me, though they die, yet they shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I hold the keys of life and death. Because I live, you shall live also. Friends and family, we are gathered here today to praise God and to witness to our faith as we celebrate and remember the life of Hugh Vaden Hubbard, Jr. We come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss, and we come together in joy to celebrate a life well lived. May God grant us the grace that in pain we may find comfort, in sorrow, hope, in death, resurrection. As Chris said, my name's John Haidt, and I'm one of the 8 grandchildren, and I certainly appreciate Bert Brooks, Nana and Papa's pastor, sitting in the back there. No responsibility today, but he's given me some of the words to share, and you may have heard some of these same words at Nana Hubbard's funeral. I want to speak just a second before we turn it over to the next speaker to the 4th generation that's in this room. These are the great-grandchildren of Hugh Hubbard. And as y'all listen, we got quite a few speakers today. We need to share some love. I want this 4th generation to listen closely to the life he lived and the way he touched people. And he was so proud of all of you all. Everybody has a Christmas tree full of ornaments. He made one for every grandkid every year and every great-grandkid and everybody in the family. And I'm going to briefly run through the names, and as I call your name, please stand up. Joshua Hugh Fleming. Taylor Hugh Hubbard. A lot of Hughes in there. Elizabeth Ellie Walton Hubbard. Emma Yvonne Sanders. Ella Elizabeth Saunders. Jacob Charles Fleming. Robert Thomas Haidt. John Benjamin Haidt Jr. Mary Caitlin Haidt, she's watching on video with a fever. Layla Alma Winch. Jonas Samuel Fleming is also under the weather today. When you got 50 people, I guess we're going to miss a few, right? Uncle Dan as well. Parker Johnson Haidt. Alex Ronald Winch. Janie Yvonne Haidt. Audrey Dean Haidt. And she just met Nana Hubbard's sister with the maiden name Dean. Juliet Rose Fleming. Lauren Victoria Haidt. William Riley Carlson, that's Liam. Hilton Hubbard Haidt. Spencer Lynn Haidt. Virginia Catherine Height, and the youngest of all, Camden James Kennedy, and here with her dad, Kyle Edward Kennedy. You guys can be seated. So just listen to these words that your papa lived, and y'all will all be here after many of us are long gone, and try your best to live out some of that same amazing, consistent life. Papa's baby girl, Judy, will now come up.
Let me see. First of all, I would just like to thank everyone for being here today. My cup runneth over to see so many family and friends from over the years. It truly touches my heart. I just have a little story. About 35 years ago or so, my mom ran across a poem, and she sent it to me, and she said, "Doesn't this sound like your dad?" And I totally agreed. And anyway, I had the poem written in calligraphy and got it framed and gave it to him as a gift. And that picture of framed poem stayed in his office all these years. He was always there. So I just kind of felt it was appropriate to read it today. It's called The Humanist. "I'm not a praying man," he says, and quite believes it's true, but you can always count on him when there is work to do. He's right there with a helping hand whenever there's a need and when there are children to be clothed or hungry mouths to feed. He's not a praying man, he says, and yet I've seen him share with others, giving cheerfully when he had none to spare. I've heard him speak a kindly word when slander flew about, and lend a quiet courage to a fellow down and out. I've seen him watch a sunset and listen to a song. I've heard his friendly whistle when a stray dog came along. Because of him, the world is a better place today, and yet he quite believes it when he says he doesn't pray. And I'm sorry, the author of that was Helen Marshall. I forgot to say that. My dad has been my hero my entire life, and he truly made a difference in this world. Thank you.
I'm Hugh's son, Robert, or Bob, and for a lot of you here, Bobby. My father was a true optimist. When my wife Nancy and I were about to see him and felt he needed to go to the hospital a couple of weeks ago, he reluctantly agreed to go, and we told him he needed to pack his bag for possibly 2 or 3 nights in the hospital. So he went to his back bedroom and to his bathroom, and he came out with the bag. This is it. And I said, "Dad, you're going to be there for possibly 2 or 3 days." And he said, "I don't plan on staying that long." Another thing about my dad I think is interesting is that he lived and died by his own terms. On his last day at the skilled nursing home in Brandonville Woods, he was in bed, and he was very restless, and he pointed to a chair that was in the room, and he got up out of bed, stood up, and with a little bit of help, he was escorted around the bed to the chair, and he sat down, and he passed away about 5 minutes later. And there was no doubt in my mind what he was thinking was, "I'm not going to die lying down." My father was a rules follower, company rules, government rules, society rules. A rule's a rule. He accepted and respected others' rules, but many of the rules he followed were his own. His rules established a routine and lifestyle that resulted in good health, contentment, many admirers, and a sizable investment portfolio. and his financial advisor is here with us today. His rules were never written, but we all knew what they were. For today, I took some of those rules and converted them into what I called 25 things my father never did. He never showed up late for an appointment, never spent a dime without a justification, never aligned himself with a political party, never overstayed his welcome when visiting, never missed a day on the treadmill, and he never rode in a golf cart when playing golf. And you have to realize that he lived on a golf course, played 2 or 3 times a week, and even if his partner rented a cart and had an empty seat, he would not get in it. He was going to walk the course. Never raised his voice, never thought twice about supporting the underdog, never criticized others, well, maybe a couple, some of our ex-presidents, never broke a promise, never expected more from others than himself, never saw a glass half empty. He never let a friend or family member down in a time of need, and never showed favoritism for any family members except my mother. He would never hire someone to do something he could do himself. He never threw anything away if he could repair it. And he never thought less of a person based on race, religion, or nationality. He was never interested in taking a vacation. He was always happy just where he was, at home. He never accepted a handout, even if he asked someone to stop and pick up bananas on the way to visit him. As soon as you got there, he wanted to know how much they were, and he wasn't going to be satisfied until he paid you. Never defaulted on a debt, never purchased anything requiring a loan except the home. Never recognized the difference between coach and first class. Never had a desire to own expensive items or eat out. He carved a dozen canes, but never used one himself. And he never, ever stopped loving his wife and best friend of 80 years.
For those that don't know me, I'm Jimmy Kennedy. I was blessed beyond to be raised by the Hubbards from the age of 7 years old. I know this is a very sad time for all of us, but Paul would not want us, he would want us to be happy, just like he always was. As he stated to my cousin John, my cup hasn't stopped flowing. Paul is now reunited with our mom, the love of his life. I have many memories, but have picked 3. My first was when Paul and I were preparing the vegetable garden for spring planting and needed to prepare the soil. We borrowed Mr. Luck's truck, went to a nearby farm, and shoveled chicken manure from a large chicken house. We stunk so bad. We loaded the truck and took it all home to spread over our garden. The only one that was happy to see us on that return trip was our family dog, Mickey. He just loved our smell. My second was when I was 16. Paul dropped me off at Douthit State Park for an 8-week Youth Conservation Corps camp. On picking me up, on the drive home, Paul looked over at a creek. He said, "I'd like to have some of those large rocks from my flower bed." I told him I would be glad to get them for him. We pulled over, got about 8 rocks as he pointed them out on the bank. The last rock was near a limb from a tree hanging over the creek. I did not know that limb had a hornet's nest. It lit me up to no end. And we both ran out of there. And the third memory was told to me by Nanny Hubbard, my grandmother. And I was young, and I asked about a picture she had on the wall. And it was a young boy sitting on some steps. She told me that when Pa's sister, which was my mom, my real mom, was born, he was not happy. He told his mom he was going to pack a suitcase and leave. Nanny helped him put the case on the front porch. And about 15 minutes later, she went out there, and he was still there. But you see, he was only 5 years old. To conclude, I will always be thankful for Pa, for shaping my life, for showing me the way, for being there when I needed him, and for showing me good from bad, and teaching me all he could. Also, special thanks to Carolyn, Bobby, and Judy for sharing their parents with me for the last 57 years. Pa was no ordinary man. He was an amazing man of many skills, many of which he taught me. Pa would say, happiness isn't having what you want, but wanting what you have. Appreciate the simple pleasures in life and don't ask for more. We all know Pa well enough. He's no longer here to ask questions. We can say to ourselves, what would Pa do? And we'll know the answer. Cheers to the superhero I'm proud to call my dad. Thank you.
My name is Nancy Hubbard, and I am Hugh Hubbard's daughter-in-law. One of my first meetings with Bob's dad was when he drove us to see The Sound of Music at the Willow Lawn Theater. Not sure why he was driving us. We were 16 and 17 years old, but it may have been after Bob wrecked and totaled his aunt's car the very first night I met his mother. So things have gotten a lot better over the 50-plus years. I want to share with you today the daily and weekly schedule that Hugh Hubbard kept for many years. Each day started around 5:30 in the morning when he would get out of bed, make up his bed, and take and record his blood pressure and pulse. Next, he'd lay on the floor to do about 20 minutes of stretching exercises to loosen up his bad back and his bad shoulder from years of golf and tennis. He would do leg lifts and keep count of all the reps. After a morning cup of coffee, he would walk up the hill to the exercise room where he would weigh himself and record it in his log when he got home. Brandon Mill Woods long ago gave Hugh a key to the room because he would show up before the day shift came on duty. He would do about 1.5 miles or 1.75 miles on the treadmill, always at a brisk pace. The routine of the treadmill was 7 days a week. Back at home, Hugh would record his weight and vital signs in his log that he kept for years. And we were cleaning out the house, we found stacks, 1 inch thick, written in pencil of all his daily vital signs. He would take a copy of these to all of his doctor's appointments, and he would give them to the doctor like they were just precious. And the doctors would smile and wink at us and say, "Thank you, Mr. Hubbard," and put them on his chart. After his usual breakfast of Honey Nut Cheerios with bananas, grapes, and blueberries, if it was Tuesday or Thursday, then he was walking back up the hill to teach a wood carving class. If it was Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, then he would walk back up the hill for an exercise class. He took a power size class and a muscle mania class. I talked to the fitness instructor, and she said he always made a point to get on the front row, and that he made such a concerted effort to keep up with her moves. During COVID, you had to call up and reserve a place in your class because they had to space you out. She said he always called first, and he was always there. She said if he did not show up, she knew something was wrong, and she always called him. Sundays was meant to go to the grocery store. He had to go to Walmart for certain things, then he had to go to Food Lion for something else, and finally Dollar General store, always looking for the best prices. After all his exercises, lunch every day consisted of a tossed salad. The afternoon is spent going down the 20 steps to his office in the basement, updating his finances. With no computer, iPhone, or internet, everything is recorded in pencil. Hugh enjoyed an occasional old cowboy show, but always had the TV on the country music channel. If the sun was shining, Hugh loved sitting on his front porch, soaking up the sun. A dinner meal was ordered, and so it was back up the hill to check the mail on the way and pick up his dinner. The meal he brought back home, he would open it up, put it in a freezer-proof container, date it, label it, and take a frozen one out for dinner that night. He never ate the fresh one. Couldn't compute. Happy hours began promptly at 4 o'clock. One stiff drink of Bowman's vodka with orange juice in a GGO cup about this tall, a little bit of ice, not much. At one of the doctor's appointments, the nurse would ask him and say, "Mr. Hubbard, out of 7 days, how many days do you have a drink?" And he didn't hesitate. He said 7. After mixing his drink upstairs, he'd go down the 20 steps to the family room, where many times family members would join him for stories and laughter. Raise your hand if you can remember that laugh. Dinner is 5 o'clock sharp, no desserts, as he always watched his weight. He liked to keep it between 143 and 146 pounds. I tried once to tell him that nutritionists were saying that as we age, it's beneficial to carry a few extra pounds to carry you through the rough times. He looked at me like I was crazy. He liked to know what was in his refrigerator and did not like free food. Bedtime was 7 o'clock sharp. As his condition worsened, he would still attempt the treadmill, but when his pulse got above 100, he would slow the pace down, eventually move to the stationary bike, but he would finish his 30 minutes. He still managed the 20 steps in his cottage, but had to stop and rest after each set of 7. He walked to his mailbox every other day and drove to get his dinners. He stopped teaching the wood carving, but enjoyed the daily visits from his students. Vodka tonics had kind of lost their appeal, but he loved that time when family came and had theirs. Some things of note. Bob and I took his dad to renew his driver's license when he was almost 98 years old. I thought we were crazy, but I didn't say a word, and he got it, and we walked on out. The office nurse would ask him, "Mr. Hubbard, have you been depressed in the past 6 months?" He said, "Never." He always made his bed up. I never saw his bed unmade. As we were getting ready to take him to the hospital for his last admission, he told me he had to sit down twice just to get his bed made up. I want to end by saying that when we first saw the cardiac surgeon who would be performing the cardiac caths, I told him, I patted Hugh on the leg, and I said, "This is not your normal 98-year-old. And he looked at him and he said, "You know, I can't wait to present you to my valve team, because they're going to think I'm crazy when I say my patient's 98 years old, but you're pretty special." And he was.
My name is Christopher Hugh Hubbard, so I too carry on this great name. My grandfather was so special to so many people, many of whom are in this room today. There are countless stories and examples of why he meant so very much to us. Most of us speaking today and sharing with you all struggled deeply with exactly what to share with you all in a limited time frame. I wanted to share some unique examples that highlight specifically his strength and his leadership in his final days, because I had the amazing opportunity to spend the last 24 hours with him. That's right, I got to sleep at the Haven Nursing Home on Sunday night with him. First of all, my grandfather was a great leader. He was a leader in high school, at work, at home, and in life, most of which you've heard today. He was clearly always in charge. He researched everything. He was always ready for whatever was to come. He was ready financially. As Dad mentioned, his financial advisor is here with us today. At one point in time in his final 2 days, he told my sister how excited he was about the refund he would get on his annual car insurance bill that he had just paid because he knew that it was coming soon. He knew he was ready. He was also ready with his possessions. So because he was so ready and so prepared, he had the unique opportunity to pre-identify which of his possessions would go to his family members. He did that years ago, months ago. It was very well scripted. The example that I have for you is that I had an opportunity to take home the wardrobe that was his father's, and it was in his bedroom for decades. And I was excited to get it home and get it into my house, and just the other day I opened all the drawers to see what I could put in there, and there was a pair of socks. So if anybody has any question about why my blue socks don't match my black shoes today, that's why. He was also very clearly to transition to the next phase for him. And he made that well known to us. Those in the family know very well that Paul was always ready to go home. It don't matter where he was. Cambridge for Thanksgivings, any of our homes for Christmas, if he came by just to help plant a tree, he was always ready to go home. The next morning, bags were packed. He was trying to grab my grandmother because it was time to go home. And this was no different. He was ready for his heavenly home. One example of that is when we got to the Haven Assisted Living Center and they were giving him morphine, which was part of the hospice. It was something that he agreed upon, obviously. When he was at the hospital in the ICU days before, they were administering him 1 milligram, and we noticed that the dosages were 5 milligrams. A couple of us that are in the medical field knew that that was a lot for a 125-pound man. And we also noticed that he was a little bit groggy and a little bit more loopy. He was not his jovial self as he normally is. So we talked with Carolyn and my dad and Judy. We talked with the nurse. We talked with the doctors. We made this command decision that he needed to reduce his morphine to just a little bit less. I physically sat next to him in the bed and shared with him this great idea that his family had just come up with. He said, absolutely not, because I'm ready. It was at that moment that we knew that he was still in charge. Great leader. He was clearly in charge up to the very end. Also, my grandfather had a great deal of strength. He was a strong man emotionally. He was a strong man physically. You've heard countless stories about him working hard with his health and exercising every day. He survived COVID. He survived COVID because he's a rules follower. If you looked at all the pictures, there was a picture of him conversing with Judy outside with the screen door or the glass door closed, so he didn't want to have any contact with her and vice versa. God gave my grandfather a body, and he took care of it. I got many gifts from my grandfather over 49 years as the oldest grandson, but nothing was better than the time spent with him and the life lessons learned for 49 years. Thank you, Paul.
Afternoon. I'm Stephen Hubbard Height, Hugh's youngest grandson. I knew it was going to be real tough to speak today when we talked about getting everybody to stand up, and I started writing a few things together earlier this week, a couple days, and got to think about his life, and what I came up with was that, as a grandson or anybody, his life was like a dream, of family, kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and so I started writing, and I wanted to call this, the Hubbard Dream Life is what it was. So, but today, I feel like both Nana and Pa would want us to be celebrating versus being sad. As they're now finally reunited after this beautiful life they've lived. Of course, that's a lot easier said than done. Some of my first memories with them started in the 80s and the 90s. And again, this is like a dream to me to go down to Greensboro to the GGO. We were, playing such a beautiful golf course. We all loved golf. And like again, Paul would walk, and my brother John, he would go run a golf cart, and we would all the other grandkids would be walking, and he'd say, "Come on, get in." And he said, "Nope, I'm walking." So we would another great memory there. When I was younger, and I was just curious about him doing these exercises. I was like, I'm gonna get up and go do them with him one morning, And so I go in there, I don't know, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and Nana's still sleeping in bed, and we go down below the bed, but at the foot of the bed, and we're doing exercises and stretches, and not to wake her up, we're just trying to be quiet, and he'd do his exercise, and then we'd go on downstairs, and I'd probably jump into bed with Nana after we woke her up after a little while, but we would he cut his grass immaculate. I've never even thought about cutting grass in a straight arrow or nothing, but he cut it immaculate and with a push mower. I don't know that he had a riding lawnmower. He did it pushing. And we played many tennis matches out there with him and Nana up into their older age. Even going to Nag's Head, it was just it was a dream to go to Nag's Head as a young kid with all the family. They had at the country club, they had the biggest pool I'd ever seen in my life. Nana would take us up there and we'd swim, and it was good memories. Carving was always Paul's special thing, and we'd always go to church with Nana. Kind of quality time there. And Bobby noted, it was only 2 times that they really had to correct me on something, and they didn't raise their voice. I'll never forget it. That I kind of jumped up and grabbed their the garage door. We don't have a garage at our house, but I was curious on it. I said, I'm gonna grab it and see if I can just ride it up, and of course I broke it. But Pa, they killed it with kindness. They said, look, you don't do that. And then also, I'd be hitting golf balls around the house back home when they'd come visit us, and I'd be peppering their car with golf balls out there in the yard, hitting it when I was younger. Oh, man, good times. And as far as raising your voice, how they did it, as a parent, it's extremely tough not to get frustrated with the little ones, but they somehow never raise the voice in a situation like that. Another dream that we had was Thanksgiving at our house that we always hosted, and it's what I think every family or child would dream of having, all family together and time. And Paul would always carve the turkeys, and Nana would have special moments with each grandchild and had wonderful conversations with her. Then it was on to Branham Mill Woods. And I believe it was around 2007. And again, they were that dream couple with that dream family that rolled into town. And, it's what everybody would love to have in life, is my thoughts, as a role model. I love my visits there. I would go with Paul, literally a year and a half ago, I went and walked with him on the treadmill when my dad had his stroke. And he would outwalk me on that treadmill. I'm 40 years old, and I just thought to myself, I got to get myself in line here. But he could get it. I went to the carving class with him as well that same time I visited then, and that was a special seeing him teach the other residents there on how to carve his talent he had. We would, the kids would come down, and he made these blocks that I remember playing with, I think, when I was a little kid, that we played with these little blocks and knocked them over and whatnot. My kids would come, we'd go visit, and very special memories. And a couple of things that kind of bring me comfort is that classic country station. Instead of watching the news and all the bad things going on in the world, I'll put that on and, just think about Paul. It's comforting. Also, hanging the Christmas tree ornaments and carvings. Each year I would always call him and thank him because they were very special. Nana and Pa both were grace and peace is what I think about. They're always looking on the bright side, being positive. And of course, he had that laugh that would light up the room and lighten the mood for everyone. Pa was a straight shooter. You knew where he stood for darn sure. And again, I seriously doubt he was late for anything in his entire life, always early. I'll never forget, we have the Hubbard family picnic each year, and I just happened to be there and riding with Nana and Pa to the picnic, which was kind of unusual. I just happened to be there. I said, I'll ride with y'all. And we were going to pick up the sandwiches for the picnic. And of course, we were kind of cutting it close. And Pa was driving, and Nana was getting on him about his driving. He almost had a wreck on the way over there. We get there. He forgot his money to pay for the subs for the thing. And I said, I got it, and I went in, I paid for it, and we went to the picnic, and he made darn sure. I had the receipt. He gave me the money exactly to the penny, and, to the penny in cash and coins, that I was not going to leave without, paying for those subs. I just can't fathom the thought of, seeing my children have kids, and in turn, to have some 20-some great grandkids. It's just unbelievable to even think of that nowadays, and in my world where I am now. I was looking through some old things last night, and I came across a card that Paul wrote and a check, and it was dated 3/15/20, and it was him writing a note saying, Stephen and Allison enjoyed your visit, introducing me to Virginia. What a great addition to your family. I've sent a $100 check to each of my great-grandchildren when they were born. I hope you can use it for something special or open a savings account in her name. And I did that, and that's just some of the things that he did, and you think about it as a gentleman, still writing letters and whatnot. That I think that was Nana telling him he better write those birthday letters and those things. But that's her talking to him. My last visit with Paul was that Sunday. His door was always open at Brandon Mill Woods. The door was closed that day, and I knocked on the door. And he was getting set up in the bed, and I said, Paul, is it okay time? And he said, just give me a minute, not feeling too good. He came on in, and I had Allison and the kids with me, and I said, look, you sure you're okay? Yeah, come in. And it was a special time. I mean, he could hardly keep his eyes open. He wasn't feeling well, and the kids came in, and they were showing him their muscles and their little tattoos they had gotten and whatnot, and put him in a little bit better mood, I feel like, and he knew we were there, and we were going to say bye and go on out, and just to keep it real short, and I said, I got to go back in there and talk to him, and Allison and the kids left, and he said, it's about over, I'm about washed up. And I was a little sat there for a minute, lost for words, and I looked around, and I said, look at that smile right there you're getting ready to go see here for long, Paul. I said, that's what you got to look forward to. So, and I said that, you've created something that money cannot buy, and everyone would love to have, and it was a dream. And that, at the end of the day, I feel like Paul, he loved us all the same, but at the end, he loved Nana Hubbard, and he was ready to go see her. And I just imagine him and Nana dancing like they were at our wedding that time. Chris did an awesome video, and they were just so happy and dancing, and I can imagine them up there and having dancing now. And in closing, we all often, think we take things for granted. And, you know, we say we wish he would have gone and visit and this and that, but we're going to miss him dearly for sure. But we were blessed with him for 98 years. He gave us all a lot of time. And I feel like him and Nana and Paul would all want us to strive this time here on earth as they did, to follow and carry on to our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids the Hubbard dream life. So, thank you.
Hello. My name is Catherine, and I am Hugh's oldest granddaughter. And I spent a lot of time with my grandfather. Happy hour was our thing. The vodka was cheap. But I always say if I had to have a tagline for my grandfather's happy hour, it would be Hugh Hubbard's happy hour, where the vodka is cheap but the love runs deep. I loved sitting in his basement, and talking about life and gathering lessons. And a lot of times when I would leave, my grandfather would say, "It's mighty nice of you, Catherine, to come spend time with me." And every time I would say, "I don't do it for you, Paul. I do it for me. I am not here out of the kindness of my heart to take care of you or keep you company. I am here to soak up the wisdom and the perspective that he had on life." When I was in my 20s, I did it, my 30s, my 40s, and it was just such a blessing to be able to absorb, this great man firsthand. So to know Hugh Hubbard is to know the story of the good wolf. And you all have cards on your chair to take with you today, because it's really the way that he lived his life. And he told this story all the time. He carved the good wolf and had it on display in his home and on his desk at all times. And so I'll quickly read it. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside of me," he says to the young boy. "It's a terrible fight, and it's between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, false pride, superiority, and ego." He continued, "The other wolf, however, is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside of you, and every other person too." The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf wins?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one that you feed." And so all of our lives get busy, and Hugh, would want us to feed the good wolf. He would want us to be grateful for his life right now and not sad that it's over. So we wanted you to have this physical reminder that when you find yourself feeding the evil wolf in your life, you can remember Hugh and feed the good wolf. He lived and died by this philosophy, and I wanted to share two tangible ways that I saw him feeding the good wolf in his own life. The first is that he saw the good in every person. Every single human being, he saw the good in. In the 1950s, he was serving as an usher in his church during desegregation in Virginia. And there was a meeting prior to one of the Sunday sessions, and the head usher said, "Okay, if any black families come to the church today, you are to turn them away. You tell them that this is a private organization, and you turn them away." And Hugh Hubbard raised his hand and said, "I'm not going to do that. I'm just telling you I'm not going to do that." And so the head usher said, "Okay, well, if you let him in, sit him on the back row." And my grandfather said nothing. He went about his job, and he went to the back of the church, and when the first black family showed up, Hugh Hubbard met that family at the end of the aisle, turned around, stuck out his arm to the mother, and said, "Where would you like to sit?" And that's how he lived his life. He did not follow the rules of society in the sense if he felt like something was wrong in society, he would say no to it. In the 1980s, we were in Williamsburg on a family vacation, and on the news was a story about gay marriage. And I turned to my grandfather and I said, Paul, would you have loved any one of your children any less if they were gay? And immediately he said, no, I would love them more because they would need it. So he always saw the good in every single person. And that became a very safe space for me to go into and talk to my grandfather about different issues and people that are different than us. And he treated everyone the same. The second example of him following the good wolf is that he found the good in every situation. He was so funny. He was so funny. And not only was he funny, but he would just crack himself up. And that's what made him so funny, is he would just cackle at his own jokes. So he's 98 years old, probably about a month ago. We're at St. Mary's. He just had a cardiac stent put in, which most doctors won't even do on a 98-year-old. And they were wheeling him out. He could have died during the procedure. We were all like, is he going to be okay? They wheel him out after having this stent. He is laughing himself silly, and he goes, I told those nurses in there it felt like they were giving me a growing massage, and I am way too old for that. And all the nurses are just laughing down the hallway, and he was just cackling, and we're like, man, he's really going to be okay. This is crazy. And then when he ended up at the ICU at the end, in St. Francis, my mom and dad and I were in the room, and he was kind of fading in and out, getting tired. And so my mom wanted to be respectful, so he had kind of closed his eyes, take a little nap, and my mom wanted to be respectful, so she turned the lights out. And so his eyes are closed, my mom turns the lights out, and Hugh goes, oh man, I thought that was it. I thought I was gone. I thought I just died. And he said, oh man. He said, oh, it seemed so painless and so quick. He was kind of bummed that he didn't die, that it wasn't that easy. But he told that story to every nurse that came in. My daughter-in-law turned the lights on and I thought I died. And he was so cheap that he really kind of wanted to die in the hospital to not have to go back and pay rent at Brandon Mill Woods anymore. And so he just kept joking. He said, I don't want to make it back to Brandon Mill Woods. And I said, well, we're not going to off you, Paul. We're not going to take you out, I don't know what to tell you. And he said, that's my problem. I'm ready to go, but I keep bouncing back. So he was laughing until the end, making us laugh until the end, and it was just beautiful. So in a time like this, when it's tempting to feed the bad wolf, to be disappointed and sad, we think that we should all be happy and thrilled that we had this man in our life for 98 years. He was the greatest moral compass that I have ever been around in my life, and now with these 50 family members, that we are his legacy. And, Stephen's got his laugh, and Carolyn's got his eyes, and Chris can never be late to anything on the planet. And so we are really his legacy, and it's our job to carry forward. And he was such a bright light, but he's got, 50 bright lights on this front row that will carry forward everything that he taught us. And have the next happy hour soon, although the vodka is getting more expensive now. And it's like, just because he lived like that doesn't mean we have to.
So I'm David Height, grandson of Paul Hubbard. And as you can tell, we like to brag on Paul Hubbard. So why stop now? Paul Hubbard, he almost made it 100 years. He was born in the 1920s. He worked for 10 cents an hour during the Great Depression. He was a Marine in World War II aboard the U.S. Hornet. Those guys went months without even seeing land. They took down around 1,400 enemy planes. He loved and was with the same woman for 70 years. He was a happy, content man till the day he passed away. Rest in peace, Paul Hubbard. Thanks, David. I'll add to David's that something David told Papa when he was a young kid, and this summarizing, it could have been the only thing we said today. Papa always, those hype boys would be down there rambling, scrambling. He said, Papa always took the tennis racket nobody wanted, and he'd take the sandwich with the piece of heel bread that nobody wanted. And I mean, that just sums him up. I just want to say thanks. I heard the Brandon Mill bus rolled in, and you Brandon Mill friends have been a big part of his joy in the final years. Raise your hand if you're from Brandon Mill Woods. So thank you all. Forest Oaks was a slice of heaven. Brandon Mill Woods was a slice of heaven. Raise your hands here if you've ever been to the GGO or played Forest Oaks. I know so many of that crew is here. Thank you all that have been a part of his life and his years that are here. I have a couple of excerpts I'm going to read, and then I'm going to turn it over to Big Brother Richard Height. But it's easy to know that Paul loved his family and everything, but these are just a few of the notes that came in that Bobby and my mom selected that were very touching, and I just want to share it. These are people that I never met. The Overbrook Presbyterian Church website, there's a picture of them here back in the 80s there. Calvin Eaton wrote, Hugh Hubbard was my first Sunday school teacher at Overbrook. He set a wonderful example for a young boy. From Dr. John Port, this is his primary care. I'm following along on your father's condition, and my prayers are with you all. He's a tremendous fighter and inspiration to us all. It is an honor to know him, and we wish for a peaceful transition for him and for you all. From his cardiologist, Mr. Hubbard is a true hero and gentleman. It is an honor to be his doctor. Please let me know if you have anything I can help with. This is from Dr. Wilson Sprinkle, a longtime family friend. Claudia and I went over and visited him this afternoon in the early evening. This is when he was in hospice. He was in good spirits, and we had a very jovial and wonderful visit. To know your father is to love him. This is from Larry, his financial advisor, who I had no idea was going to be here today, but thank you for coming from Carolina. I'm so sad to hear this. I know we don't go on forever in this world, but now is the beginning of forever for your dad. He's reunited with your mother. I enjoyed a relationship of over 35 years with your parents. I remember the visits at Forest Oaks and how nice they treated me and respected me as a young broker with J.C. Bradford. I'm sending you and the family my condolences and prayers. I hope your fond memories will help heal your loss. Please keep me aware of the services and celebration. Paul Carter wrote, I'm so sorry about your dad's passing. Both of your parents were so kind to me growing up, and I considered them great friends. There are so many memories, but none stronger than the gracious smile and greeting whenever I saw them. Their faithful witness and consistency of grace is not forgotten by any of us who knew them. We offer prayers and thanksgiving to God, you and your family. And then last of all are some notes from his carving buddies in Carolina. This is 20 years ago, and I know there's any carving buddies here today? Got a few. Wonderful. These notes are from people who participated in Hugh's carving class in Greensboro while he lived there, soon after he relocated to Brandon Mill Woods. He kept these notes, so they must have been special to him. Hugh, your carving legacy is thriving in Greensboro, the Shepherd Center, and continues to have a wait list. The Wednesday get-togethers are going strong. As I reflect back, I appreciate all the more effort and dedication you put into so many years. Let me just say a big thank you and Merry Christmas to you and your family. That was from George. And then here's a group card in the last excerpt I have. Dear Hugh, words nor money can adequately express our appreciation for the years of teaching and sharing your carving talents. One never knows how much they touch lives of others when they share these talents. We have all benefited, not just from the skills we learned, but from the fellowship shared and the friendships created. We missed you, your laugh, and your sense of humor. Best wishes to you and yours. Sincerely, your students and friends. And of course, Hugh went on to settle into Brandon Mill Woods in 2007 and started a carving class, which met twice a week for 2 hours for 16 years until the end of last year when his health began to ail. And it's just really neat to see. I can only imagine the co-workers at Sears for 40 years and all the other love. And his life was so consistent. He never wavered. He never faltered. And may we all try to just do a little bit of that, and we'll be succeeding. My brother Richard will now come up and share a few things.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Height, and I'm going to read a poem that my mom wrote about her father. I think it's on the bulletin also. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not here. I do not sleep. I am in the flowers that bloom. I am in the quiet room. 98 years upon this earth, a life well lived and fulfilled with mirth. Who loved his wife of 70 years, devoted father and manager at Sears. His cup always running over, luckier than a four-leaf clover. Grandfather of 8, 21 great-grands, a wood carver with gentle hands. Teacher veteran, heart of gold, storyteller about days of old. A mighty green thumb and a lover of plants. Country music whenever the chance. A very caring and loving soul, being kind and friendly his main goal. Do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not here, I did not die. I have a few words to share about Pa, and then I'm going to close with prayer. Hugh Hubbard, my grandfather, was a giant of a man. He was a hero, husband, father, friend, teacher, grandfather, great-grandfather. He led a simple life that was full. He was full of patience and wisdom that he shared with a lot of us in this room. His beliefs were unwavering, and he was confident in them. Hugh had a strong sense of doing what was right, even when it was not popular. One of my favorite Hugh quotes is, and Jimmy already said it, but it's a good one, so I'm going to say it again. Happiness isn't having what you want, but wanting what you have. I am blessed to call him Pa, and to have witnessed these traits and have them in my DNA. I can see him now rejoicing with his best friend, his wife, my Nana. We love you both. See you soon. Now I'll close with prayer. Thank you, Lord, for the life of Hugh Hubbard. He lived his life by the golden rule, do unto others if you would have them do unto you. We pray for one another in our need, and for all who mourn with us this day. To those who doubt, give light. To those who are weak, strength. To all who have sinned, mercy. To all who have sorrow, your peace. Raise up Hugh with all your people. Receive us also and raise us into your new life. For anyone that does not know you, please speak to their heart and let them know that there is more to this life than this world. For if you call on the name of the Lord and believe in your heart that he is the Lord, you will have eternal life. Help us to love and serve you in this world, that we may enter into your joy in the world to come. This we pray in Jesus' name, who taught us to pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone that took the time today to share some great stories. As you know, my grandfather liked to build things, and he has clearly built relationships with each of you here today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come here and celebrate my grandfather and to support this great family. Special thanks to Blally's Funeral Home, who has done a great job, and to the United States Marine Corps, who will help honor my grandfather at the private graveside service in just a moment. Now, as you know, my grandfather liked to keep a schedule, and today is no different. So check your watches. We're going to make it just under an hour, as promised. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our service for today. The graveside service is private for his immediate family. If you would, if you're able, please stand while the family gathers to take this great man to his resting place. Thank you.